What's up, it's Phil from Fit World Exposed. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about why I love the front squat, why the front squat just may be one of the lifts that's going to help you reach your upper back genetic potential, and a host of other reasons as to why I love the lift in general, so stay tuned. The first reason as to why I love front squats so much is because they hit the upper back extremely hard in an isometric fashion that can't be duplicated with other squatting variations. So obviously if you're doing something like a back squat, the upper back is still working very hard in isometric fashion. But with that being said, you could lean forward, you could tip forward, and you could do a bit of a good morning style squat when you're using very heavy weights in the back squat. And you can still get the weight from point A to point B. But this doesn't happen when you're doing heavy front squats. So in both styles, your upper back is still working hard isometrically, but there's just a bit of extra emphasis, and your upper back just has to work a bit extra hard when you're doing the front squat. And this brings me to my next point. Since your upper back is working extra hard, it's really good for your posture. So you'll rarely ever see a guy who could, clean grip front squat, 405 for reps, who has terrible postures. Because to be able to lift that kind of weight, you have to be very upright, you have to have a very strong upper back. And if you have very good posture, it's going to have a great effect on your upper body. So the fact that you're doing a lower body exercise means that you're going to be a lot wider because your posture is going to be a lot better. So it's just a bang for your buck lift overall. Second reason why I love front squats so much is because they tend to have very good carryover to the push press. This is why a lot of Olympic weightlifters tend to incorporate a lot of front squats into their program. It's because the front squat does carry over to the push press, especially if you're doing front squats with a clean grip. If you're doing it with a clean grip, and you can front squat 405, that's going to give you a very good base and a good foundation to be able to press heavy weights off your clavicles. The third reason why I love front squats so much is because they're an amazing core developer. What do I mean by this? Well, in tip number 1, I said how the upper back has to work super hard in isometric fashion. Well, the same thing applies to the abs. The abs have to work super hard because you can't afford to lean a bit forward. And if you do, with 405 or something, you're for sure gonna drop the bar and the set's gonna be done. So a lot of people are actually lazy on ab work, myself included. I'm still working on that till this day. But if you incorporate a lot of front squats into your program, it's gonna help compensate a little bit. But you should still incorporate some direct ab work on top of the front squat work. With that being said, fourthly, and this is a reason why it's so good for back training, the front squat is very easy on your recovery, at least in my opinion, because there's less shear force on the spine, there's less flexion when you're doing the exercise, so it's just a safer lift overall for people who are really trying to save a bit and leave a bit in the tank for the lower back. So you'll notice that even if you front squat heavy, the next day your lower back might not be that sore. And what does that mean? It means that you could attack other exercises with a lot of intensity, such as deadlifts, rack pulls below the kneecap, a lot of heavy barbell rows, because now you have that extra energy that wouldn't have been there if you were doing heavy back squats. Because I know for myself, I'm only like a 4.5 plate squatter, but if I do over 4 plates or 455, the next day my lower back is pretty much toast, and it does have an impact on my back training. I can't go as heavy on my rows or on my deadlifts, but when you're doing the front squats, it's like you get the best of both worlds. Another important factor about recovery is that if you make the front squat your primary squatting variation, you won't have to take as many deloads because your lower back is going to be fresh more often. So that's obviously a good thing. That's what we're looking for. We want to be able to train hard week in, week out, and we only want to take rest weeks if we're sick or if we're injured. But we don't want to take excessive amounts of deloading weeks because we're squatting super heavy on the back squat and if we're not even powerlifters to begin with. Okay, so now this is probably one of the most important parts of this video. It's the fact that the front squat is going to have great carryover to your deadlift and back squat. So let's start with the deadlift. If your deadlift is improving, chances are your barbell row is going to improve. And if your deadlift's improving, chances are that your rack pull below the kneecaps can improve. So these are all great back lifts that are going to assist in your development. So if you're getting good at all these lifts, chances are your back's going to keep getting thicker and thicker as a result of getting stronger at the front squat. So now as far as the back squat is concerned, if you're front squatting heavy weights, chances are it's going to have great carryover to your back squat. And also if you want to go the powerlifting route now, you want to become a powerlifter, well, if you could front squat 405, it's going to give you a great base, because now when you transfer over, you could most likely back squat maybe 500 pounds, and then once you could back squat 500 pounds, you could build it up and you could be a great powerlifter. So as you can see, the front squat has great carryover to a multitude of different lifts, And not just one part of the lift. A lot of lifters tend to say that if you improve your front squat, it's gonna have carryover to your deadlift off the floor, it's gonna have carryover to the lockout, even midpoint. So it's really a great lift overall for helping the whole lift and not just certain parts of the lift. Another thing I love about the front squat is that if you happen to fail a rep, it's a lot smoother and a lot safer because you could simply just ditch the bar. It's right in front of you anyways, but it's a bit more complicated when you fail reps on the back squat because let's say if you fail midway, you have to kind of round and then drop it back on the pins, or it kind of depends where you fail the rep, but generally speaking, it's a lot easier to ditch the bar when you're doing a front squat. Okay, so also relatively speaking, the front squat is a lot more of a comfortable lift as opposed to something like a Zercher squat. So a lot of my subscribers will tell me, Phil, you need to do more Zercher squats. They hit the upper back super hard, which is what you like. But I personally think that the front squat hits the upper back just as hard, but it doesn't beat up your elbows as much. And that's one thing a lot of people don't talk about, is that when you do Zercher squats, if you're doing it twice a week, and if you try to do it year in and year out, I personally think that something is gonna give, and that something is gonna be your elbows. So if you're doing, over 405, I personally don't think it's the best approach to be abusing these Zercher lifts. On the other hand, if you take something like a front squat, you have tons of Olympic weightlifters worldwide and tons of bodybuilders who do this lift year in and year out with any style. They'll do cross grip, they'll do the strap grip, they'll do the clean grip with very little negative consequences. So I'm not saying that you can't abuse the Zercher lift. I think if you really work up to it over time to poundages that you could actually handle, that it could be a good lift. But I think for the long run, most people just can't handle it. And it's just too hard on the elbows over time. But I am sure that there are some strongman competitors, or just people who train strongman in general, who do a lot of Zerchers, but I'm speaking on the general population here. Okay, last but not least, the front squat is just a way more badass exercise, at least in my opinion, and that ties into my motivation to want to pursue and excel as a lift. So you look at guys like Dan Green doing these super heavy front squats, it just looks super cool, and it's just a lift that I want to get really good at. Whereas if you go on YouTube, you type in 500-pound back squat, tons of people are doing it, but you rarely ever see guys doing a 500-pound front squat. And if you could front squat 500 pounds, you're strong, period. I don't care what your other lifts are. That's a great testimonial of your strength, and it commands a lot of respect. And also, you see a lot of these guys doing these super heavy back squats, and the form just gets super ugly after 500 for a lot of people. But if you're front squatting 500 pounds, the form most likely won't look as bad, because how bad could it really get? If you lean forward, you're gonna dump the bar. So you still have to have really good form, and it just looks a lot cleaner, and to me it's a really good indicator of your strength. There you guys have it. Those are all the reasons as to why I love the front squat and why I'm gonna be taking it a lot more seriously in my training. And that's also why my back is just gonna explode in 2018. You're gonna see I'm gonna start taking my front squats more seriously. I'm gonna try to reach that 405. Right now I'm in the low 300s, low to mid. So we'll see where it takes me. We'll see how it carries over to my other lifts as well. But I want to know down below in the comment section, what do you think about the front squat? Do you think that it's a great tool to help you reach your upper back genetic potential? Do you think it's overrated? Do you incorporate it into your training? Let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.